Welcome to our first Ask the Expert session of 2022. And I'm delighted to be able to introduce Peter Maguire, who is going to be our expert on survivorship for for tonight's talk. So I'm not going to hold the proceedings up any longer. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Peter. Thank you very much for coming along.
No, many thanks indeed, Deborah. So I can say at a time, really, I'm sure, when we are all despairing at the horrors that are occurring in Eastern Europe, I find it helps to be uplifted in some way. And the coming of spring is thankfully doing that. And today has been just glorious, enabling one to gain strength to cope with and in some way, some small way, help even with just donations, those poor people that we witness every day. It has been lovely these last few days, giving such hope for the future. And I also trust that such uplift can help with living with this pesky disease, if I can call it that we all have, so not letting it dominate or really adversely affect our lives. All I just trust is that more and more of those without positive non-small cell lung cancer can be given many, many years of fruitful, full, and fun life in front of them. 10 years on is what I've said here, and merely that, it happened to be 10 years ago, almost to the day, that I had my first consultation at the Leicester Royal Infirmary, or actually at Glenfield Hospital in Leicester, when I was diagnosed with lung cancer. This is going to be a personal journey for myself over the last period of those 10 years. And basically I had a career in geophysics, in teaching and research in the geology department at the University of Leicester. And for a number of reasons, I just decided that I wanted to stop in 2007, when I was actually I was 60. I had in mind to do a long walk after I'd retired. And one of the things I had done when at the university was to take the students from the department up to the northwest coast of Scotland many a time to do undergraduate field trips. And I fell in love with the place and have been back to Scotland many a time since since I actually retired. But I decided that in 2008 or so that I would like to walk from my home in Leicester here up to where we actually had our field trips, which was near Gairloch on the west coast of Scotland in Wester Ross. And the walks, I started it in 2009 and completed it in 2010, doing it in 5 stretches, and not all at the same time, obviously. And each one was about, I can't remember, about 10 days or so. And as you say, it took me some 40 days all told to do the 5 legs. And I actually did it at the time for Maguire's, again, which is a charity organization that I'm sure you've probably come across, and Hope Against Cancer, which is an organization in Leicestershire that has been a charity in Leicestershire that has been funding cancer research in the Leicester hospital systems for many a year. And I managed to raise something, I can't quite remember now, but it was the order of a couple of £1,000 that I actually got for both Maguire, or each of 1,000 for Maguire's and 1,000 for Hope Against Cancer. Little did I know, and I'm going to have to do it like this, on the way, I should say, along this route, that I actually had the most glorious views of various places like Mam Tor from Hollin's Cross in Derbyshire, to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, which was once I'd got off the Pennine Way that I actually used for the first part of the walk, up past Glasgow, or this was just south of Glasgow, but over the Clyde, and then getting onto the West Highland Way, going by Loch Lomond and up past Conic Hill by Loch Lomond, and onto that famous Black Rock Cottage near Glencoe, still on the West Highland Way, which has been seen, I think, on many a chocolate box, that we've certainly got one next door in my kitchen with this picture on it. And then I had to do a bit of camping on the way. This was in the sort of the really wild part north of Fort William, before ending up in those lovely hills around Pullew and Gairloch, which is where we did the field trip. And the last little stretch was I was with two colleagues who joined me for that last stretch before we ended up in those villages. And that was in, as I say, in 2010, that I then wrote it all up in a couple of books, in fact, in 2011. And it was towards the end of that, soon after my 64th birthday. In September, I had a bad, dry cough through November and into December, which did calm down over Christmas. However, in January, as I've said here, the cough returned and the voice cracking. I started losing weight, and by losing weight, I mean a huge amount of weight. I became absolutely as thin as a rake. So felt that it was about time that I went to the health centre, where actually, and interestingly, there was a young locum who was sitting in with my GP, and it was a young locum who suggested I should have an X-ray, and they decided that I should. And so, which I then went to on the following day. And the day after that, my GP called me with words that I will admit that I will never forget, saying, "Don't panic. I'm afraid it appears you may have lung cancer." This is a pity, my voice is not doing very well, I'm afraid. A biopsy of the tumor was not possible, but the fluid biopsy, and the reason it was not possible, the tumor was very close to my heart, but in my right lung, but from all the pleural effusion that I had, the right lung was fairly full of fluid between the linings of the lung and the inner and outer lining of the lung, and that there was possible to have a fluid biopsy from this fluid, and they identified lung cancer, later found to be ALK positive. And it's irritating this that I'm not able to, okay, sorry, what I should be doing is this. I might just have to, better. So, lung cancer. I'm sure you probably know most of this, but there are some, I understand there are some 48,000 or so cases every year in the UK, which is an astonishing number. The ALK positive is now a total of around 1,600 per year in the UK. I may say that probably this large figure of 48,000 or so, I suspect will be reducing merely because of all those people who smoked when young, as I did myself through the 60s and 70s, has actually been reduced hugely, as we all know, over the last number of years. And the outlook, when I actually got this, it depended on the cancer stage that one had. And I will admit, I've never actually asked my consultant as to what stage it was, but I think it was actually contained within the lung rather than gone elsewhere. So if it was anything, it was stage 2 or 3. But anyway, in 2012, it was approximately 6 months to a year that you were expected to live after having developed lung cancer. But in 2018, this has improved to an average of some 7 years. And from what I understand, it is still on the increase. One should remember when saying this, however, is that some patients with advanced lung cancer live many years after the diagnosis. And also patients who are told that their lung cancer is incurable, sometimes, and it is the case, live longer than many who are told that their lung cancer is curable. So one has to be very wary about thinking of these figures. And I will admit, after being concerned early on, my dear wife just said to me, don't think about this was when one sort of understood that it might be 6 months to a year. Don't think about it, just get on with living. The ALK type is approximately 4 to 5% of lung cancer cases. And as we know, it's not a result of smoking. And the victims, I fear to say, are young, fit, non-smokers in large part. And in fact, the median age, with as many below, that is the number of people who actually have it below 50 years. the median age is 50 years. There are as many people younger than 50 years who have ALK positive cancer and in relation to it equals the number of people over 50. And I fear to say also that it is largely 70% female, which I'm not sure whether that has been explained yet, but maybe someone is able to say that at a later time. So as far as my own self is concerned, my initial treatment was the experimental targeted drug treatment was just beginning to be used in the States, but it wasn't available in the UK in 2012. And so I had to start off with, I started off with chemotherapy, and I had pemetrexed and cisplatin, which I gather is a standard for lung cancers that actually do require chemotherapy. And this was in May 2012, a couple of months after I'd actually been diagnosed. And I had that at monthly intervals through to 2012, and it was actually reduced from 6 sessions. And not only that, but I was also on that Hope Against Cancer unit, a trial EGR vaccine throughout this period as well. And I found that throughout my period of the 10 years, my consultant, who is, as I'll come to, she is a professor at within the university hospital system in Leicester, has very much tried to be at the forefront of trials and new ideas in relation to how to treat our illness. The side effects of the chemotherapy were awful, and tiredness, even more weight loss. And by the time I had that, I was really absolutely skin and bone. Cough, bowel, bladder problems, sickness, and also actually I had anemia requiring a complete blood transfusion following those. I actually had 4 sessions. And I was informed at the end of that the cancer was being kept in check. So we're now talking about August in 2012. However, it wasn't long, a mere 4 months on, before fluids started appearing in the lung once more, and the nodules increased in size, one being close to my windpipe, which could require radiotherapy. We weren't quite sure whether it would or not. And the overall survival by now, apparently I understood, was 1 to 2 years. But it was at this point that CRIZOTINIB appeared on the scene as far as we in the UK were concerned. And on the 30th of January 2013, I had my first dose of CRIZOTINIB of 250 milligrams, just to the right time. In fact, my consultant, Professor Samrin Ahmed, she obtained it from Pfizer on compassionate grounds for myself. But if the fact that it was only actually available through NICE, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, in August of 2016, so another 3 years on. So it was wonderful that I was actually put on it as a trial in the UK onto this drug. The cancer forms when the ALK gene is broken and attaches to another gene, which is generally the EML4. And what happens is that the mutation of these two linking somehow blocks messages which tell cells to stop growing so that they grow out of control. And the cells start to grow abnormally, which leads to the growth of the tumors. What the drug does, and what CRIZOTINIB, and I understand the later drugs that a number of us, I'm sure most of you are probably on, lock onto a protein in the cell to arrest that cell division. And that in itself contains the cancer. What I understand is that the CRIZOTINIB and CRIZOTINIB and alectinib and so on don't actually attack the cancer itself. Rather, the cancer is not eradicated, it's rather controlled. So my ongoing treatment, all I can say was victory. It was on the 26th of March. This was 1 year after I was initially diagnosed, and 9 years ago, almost today. I had a consultancy with Samrin Ahmed, and the tumors had reduced in size. And there was a good partial response, and my liver, and though I have to admit, I think I'm not actually sure whether this was any cancer of the liver. I'm not sure that I had actually spread to the liver, but rather that the liver was affected by all the chemotherapy. And it was after a long time, but it was no longer affected once I actually was on this drug. And the radiotherapy I also had to have. I had to have a couple of times after this March 2013 in order to stop the growth of small tumors which had evaded the CRIZOTINIB. The side effects were edema in the lower legs and left wrist. In the lower legs, I've managed to sort out by having N years worth of stockings that I've actually worn since then. And that really has just gone completely. I had what is called CRIZOTINIB vision, which is a sort of blurring of what one sees and not being able to focus, and actually having sort of little bright lights appearing as well, which was, awkward at the time. But not to worry, seeing as, as one can see that the tumors were reduced in size. And also the other thing that CRIZOTINIB does is with the heart QT, the QT prolongation, i.e. the prolongation of the muscle action between compression and relaxation of the heart muscle, which can be, that is a problem and therefore had to be considered. So CRIZOTINIB was at the end of that little lot. She reduced it down to 200 milligrams, which I was then on for a period. Well, a couple of years later, and I was on CRIZOTINIB for that length of time, a small tumor began regrowing in my right lung near the heart. And it grew to about 1 centimeter in size by February 2016, as I've said here. And at this point, I had 10 sessions of radiotherapy to actually attack that. And the nodule was reduced in size by a small amount. I should have said, one of the things, and I don't know whether other people do as well, but once I actually was diagnosed with the cancer, I think in the leading up to that time in 2012, I decided that it was essential that I document everything. So I've kept a logbook, a diary of everything that has actually happened to me since then. I should say 2016 was also a bloody good year for Leicester City winning the Premier League. I had more radiotherapy in 2017 and then through into 2018, because once again, there was a further increase in the size of the nodules. I also had my first, and this is one thing I'll be interested to hear whether other people have at all, what I call a strange turn in August 2017. I'll come back to that a little bit later. Because of the problems that CRIZOTINIB was then giving me, that I actually moved on to ceritinib, informed that it was better and better protect the brain, that being the most likely place that metastasis occurs as far as lung cancer patients as ourselves is the case. I will admit ceritinib I did not take to at all, with the most ghastly period of the time that I've actually had this ALK-positive cancer, with loss of weight, further turns, great deal of depression, night sweats, and so on. And so that was changed it was a year that I was on it, but nevertheless, I changed on to brigatinib in 2019, and which I understand protects the brain very much more. And again, I've actually been on compassionate use with this. I think once again, I'm not sure when brigatinib was first introduced on NICE, but anyway, my consultant managed to get it for me on that compassionate use. And I've now had 41 CT scans, and I'm actually got another one in a couple of weeks' time. And I've had 12 or so MRI scans, and I got another one of those in a couple of weeks' time. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the procedures that actually go on as far as these are concerned. The MRI scans, I don't know about you, but I find I don't enjoy them at all because of the noise when you actually get into that machine. Blood tests every month, and I now have a monthly consultancy, not sometimes stretched to 2 months. Initially, there was a long period where I just couldn't do any walking at all, and which I happen to be a walker. And so I got a cycling machine that I actually brought back home with me and used that. But now I am very much, and I'm back to it, walking in Leicestershire, Northamptonshire, and elsewhere. The reflections on the treatment, well, honestly, I can't thank the people in Glenfield Hospital and the Royal Infirmary in Leicester enough for all that they have done. And I'm also now making use of, and these are one or two of the staff who I saw, and actually some of these on this picture, which is on the web for the hospitals of University Hospitals of Leicester, I have seen over the 10 years that I have actually been going back to the hospitals, once a month or however short a period it is. But also the general hospital, where I found over the last period, and this is actually, I fear to say, what is actually happening a little bit at the moment, I've gone to see neurology and medical psychology for problems that I've got with my, I guess I can say with my brain. And it is, I found, and one of the difficulties is, and I make this point a little bit later, I think, or in a short time, one of the difficulties is that I'm not sure how much of the problems that I'm actually having now are due to my aging, and I'm now 74 years old, or due to all the drugs and the cancer and so on. And one of the things that I actually have had with the neurology and medical psychology, the reason for doing this is, one, that I'm having these turns, as I've described them, which are overnight and really fairly nasty turns. They were thought to be panic attacks, as they were called, but I'm not so sure that that's the case. And also the other thing is I'm losing large chunks of memory, which is in an unusual way for someone who is, getting on in years, as I am beginning to myself. Anyway, I might come back to that. What are the reflections on treatment? Well, following the upset at diagnosis, the confidence, calm, coordination, cleanliness, and I can't read that underneath there, but no worries, of the hospitals, is also being aware of the illness implications. And I've been informed about what the implications have been all the time. The very quick start to anything that is needed changing, and it's just I've been done immediately. The knowing that there are multidisciplinary team meetings and by the doctors involved in my case. Not only that, but also discussion of the condition with outside the system with McNaggis and Macmillans, and I'm sure again many of you will have actually considered them. And obviously my regular consultations every month, but now probably every 2 months, and all over, over the COVID period on the telephone, and a few of them actually in the hospitals. And absolutely, and in particular, I've had a personal lung specialist nurse who I can contact at any time, at any day of the week. And she may not be there, but she'll get back to me as soon as she possibly can. And that has helped simply enormously. And I would recommend that if anybody doesn't have a lung specialist nurse, they are strongly advised to ask your consultant to see whether that can be possible. It's still stressful waiting with a consultation after a CT or MRI scan, but I do know that having all those scans is very much more than calming and enables one to live with this cancer. And all I can say is, as for the NHS staff in oncology, radiology, the pharmacy, my local health centre, I cannot thank them enough for all the care, patience, and encouragement at all times. What about in the future? Well, perhaps the main thing I've learned is the following. When diagnosed with lung cancer, and at the time before all the targeted drugs really appeared, I immediately believed I had a terminal illness. I think after 10 years of living with it, I realized that I'm fortunate enough now to feel that it is, and I actually live thinking of it in this way, as a chronic illness. I no longer think of it as terminal. And I trust that more and more are able to do the same. This has enabled me to get on with a number of things, and I'll whiz through this because I'm getting on in time now. Both new ventures and new. And one of them is, I will admit, I try once a week at least to go out for a long walk, if possible, through the footpaths and byways in the countryside around South Leicestershire and Northamptonshire. And it is mainly green pastured hills. That's the Leicestershire arm of the Grand Union Canal that links the Grand Union right round through Leicestershire to the north and onto the northern cisterns. This is up on, I think, on a hill called Honey Hill close to us. And then this is a reservoir near me in a village by the village of South Kilworth, which again is a bird reserve that I try and go to many times. And I also dabble in a bit of geophysics, in fact, although that's somewhat limited these days. And over the recent past, I've been looking at a number of stations. These are seismic stations over Scotland, which are run, a lot of them, just by individuals. You can actually buy these for admittedly quite a lot of money. The order of, less than £1,000, but nevertheless, it's a lot of money. and anybody can access their data. And this was an earthquake that occurred in near the island of Mull. And in fact, Scottish seismicity, there are a lot of earthquakes that occur in Scotland, as you can see. Interestingly, they all occur on this western side, and it's thought that they do occur because of from the last ice age, that the ice melted and the land is now rebounding from that ice age, resulting in little tiny movements which caused the earthquakes. And then what I did was look to the seismograms that actually emerged at some of these stations from this earthquake here. Anyway, an aside. And I've also picked up on astronomy, and we're taking a picture of Saturn from my back garden, seeing Saturn's rings. And there's Jupiter again from the back garden. There are 4 moons of Jupiter that you can actually see there. And of course, our dear moon, which has been so wonderful over these last 2 or 3 nights. Have there been difficulties? And the answer is, as I'm sure with everybody, there are difficulties in having a cancer that is, as I say, not eradicated, but is just controlled. And for myself, I will admit, perhaps one of the main things is not knowing whether a particular problem that I'm having is whether it's due to the cancer or to my age, as I mentioned before. And those problems, as I've said, I will admit there is an onset of anxiety, and possibly more somehow with the cancer. These strange turns at night and also during the day when they occur. There's still, even after the many, 10 years of living with this, I still get quite a lot of pain in the chest sometimes. And as you can hear with my voice at the moment, sometimes losing my voice. However, I think being active, if at all, both mentally, reasonably, and possibly, if one can be, and when possible, physically, and living very much in the present. And I have to admit, I have used relaxation. And early on, I tried mindful techniques, but just relaxation exercises leaves me very much with the feeling that, oh, this cancer I've got is just an illness. There's no reason why it should get me down. And even now, let's just get on and enjoy life and all that it has to offer. Thanks ever so. And have a wonderful spring and summer that are coming our way.
On such a positive note, and say once again, Peter, thank you very much indeed for sharing your story with us. It will inspire others because we will put it on our website. So you will go on inspiring people for quite some time to come yet. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. I hope